Where we do have a choice is how we exist through the suffering and whether we let ourselves suffer or we kind of use the pain that we've endured to strengthen our characters and try and navigate through life in spite of it.
And my first question is for you. Season 2 is kind of all about hope, love, defying the odds and all in the face of darkness. But the Darkling didn't really have much of that, unfortunately. Do you feel he might have found redemption if he'd met Alina maybe a century before he does? Or do you think he was just too consumed with power and his love for it by that time?
I think that's a really, really good question. We get a little tease of near the end of the first season about what his life might have been like a century before, and I think that there is a kind of kernel of a man inside of him instead of a general. No, it's like a seed.
Like
inside he's a kernel. No, there you can see where he's come from, that there was love, there was hope, there was joy, there was a way of going about doing things that was more gracious, and I think that he's very much become blinkered along the way in terms of how he can cope with things, and frustration builds and rage builds and the betrayals add up, and I think, I'm not making excuses for this psychotic toxic villain character, but I think that the interesting things are for me in the second season were to chart where the tiny cracks of hope and vulnerability and wondering whether there's, if you want to really see poison and dark, it's got to be balanced with something. You've got to see this sort of almost potential, like you said, for a little bit of hope. And I think that's what's interesting about the show, is that we have 16 main characters and all of them are capable of going dark. All of them are capable of being hopeful and joyful. All of them are capable of falling in love. It's just to what degree and to what extent and under what circumstances. And I think sort of seeing them all navigate that is what makes the show really watchable this season, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Alina, also has quite an emotional arc in season 2. So Jessie, kind of, how do you feel about her choices, her fight for love, her connection to the Darkling, like how those will affect her moving forward, especially considering the ending of season 2, where we see a potentially darker path for her going forward?
Yeah, it was funny. We were talking about this yesterday. I think what I love about Alina is, like, from season 1 till now, till like the end of season 2, she's had such a journey. And I think, from reading the scripts in season 1, a lot of the word that I attached to Alina really was that she was scared, that she was afraid. Through a lot of season 1, even towards the end when she grows in power, like all of her, she uses her powers in like a reactionary way out of fear. And season 2, we see her like growing, rather than fear, it's bravery. We see that she's afraid, but she's overcoming it. And that's, like, I find to be very compelling when you see someone that's, been weak and vulnerable, like trying their best. And what I really like about it is, like you said, towards the end of the season, there's a little hint that, we could be moving away from that into a territory where she's no longer brave, but she's like fearless. It's like she's gone on this journey. And that can be dangerous as a character trait. So I think it's really exciting, and it's been, it was really interesting to kind of delve into these parts of Alina that, that weren't necessarily in the books. Very much brought in by our writers, and lots of like real life experiences that were thrown in the mix there. So it was really interesting, and I hope that it's you can really feel that arc and feel that character growing and changing.
And Daisy, Genia too had an amazing arc this season. Reckoning with how she was treated by the royal family and the Darkling, and dealing with this trauma that she's carrying. So what was it like to explore this side of the character in such an affecting way?
I think it's incredibly powerful. I think all humans at some point will inevitably feel and face some kind of pain in their life, and we have no choice in that. But where we do have a choice is how we exist through the suffering and whether we let ourselves suffer or we kind of use the pain that we've endured to strengthen our characters and try and navigate through life in spite of it. And so I think I really appreciate that aspect of Genia, that, you know, she doesn't let it, obviously it has an effect on her, but she utilizes it in order to try and do better and be better and do what's morally right. And I think it's incredibly powerful, and a good lesson for all, that although you can't choose your pain, you can choose your suffering.
All right. Well, that is a great way to end on. My time is up, but let me just say it's a pleasure speaking with all three of you. I loved this season. So thanks again for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.